Ester Roi was an artist and an inventor. She uses crayons, colored pencils, and oil pastels in a special way. She melts them together on a heated board she invented called the Icarus drawing board, which sounds like a magical tool. That heat helps the colors blend smoothly, creating beautiful effects like paintings. This is different from how you might use crayons normally, where the colors stay separate. Ester Roi likes to draw inspiration from nature, especially rocks and water. She helps us see these things as a new and exciting way through her artwork. She lives in Southern California, which is a sunny state on the west coast of the USA. The name of her drawing board, Icarus, comes from a Greek myth about someone who flew too close to the sun. I hope you enjoy getting started on creating your own inspired artwork by Ester Roi in these colorful jelly bean project. Let's take a moment and get started creating these beautiful and amazing three-dimensional oil pastel colored jelly beans in the style of Ester Roi. When you get started, you're going to be taking one of these pieces of manila drawing paper. I tell you that in advance because one, you'll notice that it's not white, but two, it's also a little bit more delicate than the white paper, so it doesn't erase very well. And it also provides, though, a little bit of tooth, which means a little bit of texture to help hold some of the oil pastels really nicely. So that's why I chose it, is because one, it's not white, and two, it has a great texture on it. But please be careful when you're erasing or using your oil pastels because I don't want your paper to rip. Okay, once I've traced around at least 7 jelly bean shapes, I'm also creating an area so that I don't forget to put on the white highlight to your jelly bean. That just kind of helps make it look shiny, and it kind of gives it more of a three-dimensional look to it. Comparing that to some of the rocks that we saw at the very beginning, I could definitely see highlights on her rocks that she painted. So I'm going to use that as my inspiration when I start putting highlights onto my jelly beans. Once I've got my jelly beans done, I'm going to go ahead and grab a color. I'm going to give you a little tip of the day. When you're getting started with a color, try to find a color that you can find a darker value of. I know I struggled a little bit with my purple because purple is pretty dark already, and I wish that I probably would have picked a different color. But that's okay. I'm going to show you what I did to think about what I should do to make a darker rim around the outside edge of my jelly bean. So like I said, you can see that I'm leaving a little bit of space around my oil pastel work, not getting it all the way up to the pencil line, but I left a little bit of space for a color that I could use to make my jelly bean have a darker color so that the jelly bean kind of has more of a look of form, making it look 3D. So I'm starting with a basic solid color. And then my next step is I want to go a step darker to go around the outside shape of my jelly bean. It helps it make it not look so flat. Also, feel free to use more than one color, or a color more than once, on your jelly beans. It's totally fine to show repetition and using a color more than one time. There, as you can see, I'm trying to fill it in with a nice thick oil pastel color and then leaving myself a little bit of space for the darker value to add to each jelly bean. Sometimes in your oil pastel set, it might be really easy to find. For example, pink, a darker value would be red. And some of my oil pastel containers have 2 different colors of green, a light green and a dark green. Now remember, I want to make it look 3D. So sometimes I go back into the lighter oil pastel color or the darker oil pastel color, just so it has more of a gradient and it's not just 2 separate lines, but instead looks more like a form. It's totally fine to start out with 2 separate lines, but now you can see that I'm starting to use my oil pastels, my darks and my lights to smear them together so that it's not 2 separate colors, but instead they're merging. My light oil pastel goes into my greener or my dark green oil pastel to give it an illusion of form. Blending some of those colors together. If you feel comfortable grabbing a paper towel to do your blending, that might work really nicely too, so that it's not a sharp edge between the two colors. Same with the pink and the red. You can see that I'm filling in that extra space of the jelly bean with red, but I'm not going to leave it as two separate lines. I'm trying to let my colors blend and mix. So I grabbed my lighter oil pastel, dragging the red into the pink areas and letting them mix and blend. There, that really does help make your project look more three-dimensional and give it the illusion of form. Okay, I've got a couple more left. You'll notice that I kind of went to, I saved my purple for last because purple's a really dark color. So when I'm looking at my purple, I'm already kind of thinking while I'm working on some of these other jelly beans that were a little bit easier. So I was thinking about even when I used my orange and then merged it into a red, I started thinking again about our analogous color schemes, colors that are next to each other on the color wheel. So when I went from my orange and merged it into my reds, I thought to myself, well, what two colors could I use with purple? I could either use a red on the outside edge, or I could go to blue, because those are the colors that are right next to purple on the color wheel. I chose blue, trying to give it more of that 3D form, and again, letting those colors mix and blend to create the illusion of form. I hope that helps. Now, let's get started using complementary colors to outline. Looking at the color wheel, I'm going to go to the direct opposite. For my orange jelly bean, I will outline with blue. This helps make your jelly beans, again, have even greater depth or illusion of form, and it also makes your jelly beans pop or have some of those color choices similar to Ester Roi. You can see with these complementary colors outlining over top of your jelly bean, complementary opposite sides of the color wheel, they really seem much more dramatic and much more vibrant. Let's compare the two. With this picture, it's just colored, and then this picture shows the outline with its complementary color. Boy, they really stand out. Now, let's go into making the halo around the jelly beans. Remember at the beginning, we did not start out on a piece of white paper, so that we could go into a white oil pastel and again, just kind of give it that overall nice sharp edged look, lot of rich oil pastel building up on the page to create a lot of vibrant colors, making things stand out, giving the illusion of form. I think that this really helps out as well. So I'm taking my oil pastels, a lot of outlining, and please go around to create a halo or a little bit more outline around each of your jelly beans. You'll notice that some of these start bumping into each other, and it gives it a nice look to the form. When you're done with your white oil pastel, let's go into creating our background. In my background, I chose a color. Again, thinking about our jelly beans and thinking about how I can layer up my colors. If you want to smear the oil pastel, I really like the way this looks because it kind of fills in any extra areas that are white. And then I'll use a darker color on the inside. I love the way this looks. Thanks for watching and happy art making.